They want you to believe the system is fixed, that power belongs to those who were born into it, that you are destined to serve while they collect the rewards. That belief keeps most people still. But when you stop complaining and start observing, you notice something important. The system is not magic. It is habits, repetition, patterns of behavior. The people who own. It simply mastered those patterns before you did. That means you can learn them too. The moment you shift from resentment to study, everything changes. Life stops feeling like it is happening to you and starts feeling like it is waiting for you to move correctly. In relationships, the system looks like manipulation. One partner withholds affection to gain control, or uses silence as punishment, or flatters to distract from neglect. At first, it feels like they have the power, and you must bend. But the moment you recognize their tactic, the spell is broken. You can use the same awareness to flip the script, not by playing dirty, but by refusing to feed their pattern. If they withdraw attention to get a reaction, you give them stillness. If they twist words to trap you, you answer with clarity so sharp that it cuts through the game. You don't beat manipulation by begging for fairness. You beat it by refusing to be predictable. The same truth applies in careers and social circles. People gatekeep opportunities by pretending knowledge is scarce, when in reality they are recycling the same methods they don't want you to learn. They overwhelm you with jargon, politics, and rules, hoping you'll get intimidated and stop pushing forward. Instead of retreating, study their patterns. If they play politics, observe how they network. If they use influence, understand the psychology of influence yourself. You don't have to destroy the system to win. You simply have to master the rules well enough to stop being controlled by them. The mistake most people make is thinking rebellion means chaos. They believe to fight the system is to burn it down. But burning it down leaves you with nothing but ashes. Real power comes from learning the rules so well you no longer need to fear them. When you understand the game, you realize it doesn't matter who built it. You can win inside it and eventually change it from within. That is why self-education, emotional discipline, and control of your impulses matter more than raw rebellion. Relationships are no different. If someone uses guilt as a weapon, you don't need to argue with guilt. You recognize it, name it, and calmly refuse to carry it. If someone tries to keep you trapped by feeding you illusions of love, you recognize that true love is measured in patterns, not words. Once you know their game, their control dissolves. Most people are trapped not because the system is strong, but because they never took the time to see it clearly. The system, whether in work, love, or society, is always about control. Control of attention, control of energy, control of resources. Once you stop giving away those things cheaply, you tilt the power back in your favor. You don't need to be louder or stronger. You need to be sharper, calmer, more patient. That is the difference between the one who complains about being trapped and the one who quietly rearranges the game to their benefit. Every tactic they used on you can be repurposed. Silence can be turned into your tool for presence. Scarcity can be turned into your tool for standards. Patience can be turned into your tool for timing. The very methods they thought would keep you down become the weapons that lift you higher. You do not need a new system. You need mastery over the one you are already standing in. This is why the people who rise are not always the most talented or gifted. They are the ones who stopped reacting blindly and started learning. They are the ones who saw manipulation and didn't just get angry. They took notes. They are the ones who faced rejection and didn't just despair. They learned resilience. Every tactic they faced became a lesson, and over time, those lessons became an arsenal. The truth is simple. Life is not fair. People will use systems to control you, to manipulate you, to convince you they are untouchable. But when you stop fighting blindly and start thinking deliberately, you realize the system is not owned by anyone. It is borrowed by those who understand it better. The moment you master it, you stop being a pawn. You become a player, and eventually you become the architect. And that is the shift. You do not need to be louder than them. You do not need to be crueler than them. You only need to be more deliberate. Their tactics don't belong to them anymore. They belong to anyone sharp enough to recognize them, which means they don't own the system anymore. You do. They expected you to explode. They wanted chaos from you, a display of rage, a storm they could point to and say, "See, we were right about them." That was their goal, to drag you into a pit of noise where they had the advantage. But you refused. You stayed calm, unbothered, collected. That composure wasn't weakness, it was discipline. And that discipline unsettled them because it was foreign to their nature. They thrive on reaction. They live off the energy of others losing control. When you didn't give them that energy, it starved them. They realized your stillness was not absence, it was presence. It was power condensed into silence, and silence always weighs more heavily than noise. They mistook calm for surrender. They assumed that if you weren't fighting on their terms, you weren't fighting at all. But the truth was sharper. You understood that battles are rarely won by the loudest. They are won by the one who refuses to be rushed. They spent their time performing, rushing into words, rushing into moves, hoping to corner you. You did nothing of the sort. You let them overextend, let them show their cards, let them exhaust themselves. And in the end, they exposed more about themselves than you ever revealed. That realization cuts deeper than any insult. They understood too late that composure is not passivity. It is control disguised as quiet. In relationships, this composure changes everything. They wanted to provoke you with games, withholding affection one day and drowning you in it the next. They expected you to spiral into confusion, to beg for clarity, to demand answers. Instead, you remained steady. You didn't chase. You didn't collapse. That lack of reaction frightened them, because it meant they couldn't manipulate you anymore. They were no longer pulling strings. You were cutting them one by one. Calmness in the face of manipulation is more violent than anger. Anger tells them they still have influence. Calmness tells them they've lost it completely. At work, in friendships, in family ties, composure becomes the ultimate weapon. People try to bait you with insults, politics, or guilt, expecting you to be swayed. They lean into drama because they assume it's universal, that everyone will respond the way they do. You didn't. You responded with patience, with measured words, with silence when silence was enough. And that silence pierced deeper than shouting ever could. They were left unsettled, forced to face themselves without distraction. Your calm turned the spotlight back on them, and they hated the reflection they saw. Psychology reveals why this unsettles people. Humans are wired to mirror emotions. When someone yells, others feel the urge to yell back. When someone panics, panic spreads. But when someone stays calm under fire, it disrupts the natural rhythm. It forces the other person to feel foolish, exposed, and powerless. That's why your calmness carried the essence of cruelty. It denied them the comfort of shared chaos. It left them screaming into a void while you simply watched, steady and unshaken. They weren't prepared for that, because their entire power rested on pulling you into their frequency. They called you cold, detached, even emotionless, but that was projection. You weren't cold, you were disciplined. You weren't detached, you were selective. You weren't emotionless. You simply refused to bleed where they wanted you to. They tried to shame you for not reacting the way they demanded, but deep down they envied it. Because composure is something they cannot master. Their lives are controlled by impulse, by the rush of proving themselves, by the panic of being ignored. You had mastered the art of self-control, and in doing so, you showed them what real strength looks like. Your composure gave you time. While they wasted energy rushing into attacks, you conserved yours. While they revealed desperation through their constant need to be recognized, you revealed nothing. This balance tilted the entire game in your favor. They thought the one who moves fastest wins. You proved the one who moves last, with precision, ends it all. That composure became your shield and your sword. Every time you stayed unbothered, you made their weapons useless. Every time you stayed collected, you made their noise sound hollow. In love, calmness is a revolution. They expected tears, rage begging. They thought they could measure their worth through your reactions. But when you didn't break, when you smiled instead, when you laughed softly instead of shouting, it dismantled their illusions. They realized you no longer needed them to validate you. That was the cruelty of your composure. It wasn't about ignoring them. It was about proving that even their best attempts to disrupt you were powerless. That's when they understood the balance had shifted. They were no longer the center, you were. There is a kind of authority that comes from composure. It doesn't need announcements. It doesn't need theatrics. It lingers in the air undeniable because it cannot be faked. They saw it in you and felt small. They knew they could mimic laughter, mimic confidence, mimic boldness, but they could not mimic the stillness you carried. That stillness was born from battles they had never fought, from storms they had never survived. It was real, and reality always unsettles those who live in illusion. They poked at you with petty words, hoping you would bleed energy over scraps. A sideways comment here, a fabricated rumor there. A challenge thrown not to test your strength, but to trap you in meaningless exchanges. Small battles are designed to make you forget the war. They wanted you locked in arguments, tangled in gossip, burning your focus on fires too small to even matter. But you learned to see through their bait. You recognized that not every insult deserves an answer. Not every accusation deserves a defense. By staying still while they flailed, you left them swinging at shadows. The real cruelty wasn't in striking back. It was in letting them burn themselves out while you remained untouched. Distraction was their greatest weapon. They couldn't match you in vision, so they tried to flood you with noise. Petty confrontations, shallow victories, endless attempts to draw your attention away from where it mattered. You understood the psychology behind it. People who fear being outgrown will drag others down into cycles of reaction. By refusing to step into those cycles, you denied them fuel. They saw your lack of response as arrogance, but it was strategy. Why waste energy proving yourself, right in battles that don't affect the outcome of your life? You stayed fixed on the bigger game, and your refusal to engage left them unsettled because it reminded them how little they truly mattered. Every relationship carries these small wars. Someone who feels powerless will push for arguments, testing if they can control your mood. They will try to bait you into emotional spirals just to confirm they still hold influence over you. The more you argue, the more control they feel. But when you decide your peace is too expensive to trade for small confrontations, you shift the entire power dynamic. You stop bleeding attention into their hands. You reclaim the authority to choose which conflicts are worth your energy. That shift terrifies manipulators because it means they no longer have strings attached to you. At work, the same game is played. Colleagues try to provoke, rivals stir unnecessary competition, supervisors push buttons to see if you will crack. They thrive on watching you overact because reactions can be used against you. You, however, learned the art of composure in the face of provocation. You understood that silence can cut sharper than rebuttals. Instead of fighting for every inch of ground, you conserved your energy for the moments that truly mattered, when patience turns into precision. That is how you built authority, not by winning every small argument, but by winning the battles that rewrote the landscape entirely.